Well, a very good afternoon to you all, everybody. It's Natalie Ashdown here with you from Open Door Coaching. Welcome to our coaching cafe, where today we're going to be looking at bad questions and how to avoid those ineffective questions. It's wonderful to see you all coming on the line. You can just check that you can hear me okay and you can see the slides okay. Welcome to you if you happen to be listening to this via our podcast channel now, which is very exciting as well. Before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians of the lands on which we meet today and their continuing connection to the land, waters and communities of Australia. We pay our respects to them and to their elders past, present and emerging, and anyone who might be on the line today from an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent. And as I've been saying during our webinars, it's great to be able to do this acknowledgement because we wanted to acknowledge our traditional owners, but also it also acknowledges that we are all coming together on this technology from different lands to learn today. So if you are here because you want to learn, that's great. If you're also collecting your ICF CCEUs, then all you need to do is pop a message in the chat box. Just send a message to info at support at opendoorcoaching.com.au and we can help you out with that as well. So our agenda, let's take a look at what makes an ineffective question. What's the impact on the coachee if the coach is asking ineffective questions? And then take a look at the reframes that we might be doing as well. If you are new to our coaching cafes, welcome. We are all about creating a community, sharing our learned experience. There's so many wonderful coaches on the line. We come together every Friday for these coaching cafes to have thought-provoking conversations and to really learn from each other. And as you can tell, I am super energized and super excited to be here. I love Fridays with you all. And that's me. I used to have my professional photo there, but that's me in full Zoom mode with all my flip charts and everything behind me. And we'll be enjoying lunch together as well. So as I mentioned, if you are keen, you can pick up CCEUs for this session. If you'd like to interact with us and with the group, feel free to pop a message into the chat box and I can pick up the messages from the chat box and I'll share your questions, share your thoughts as we go along. We want this to be interactive, so please feel free to jump into the chat box as we go. And welcome to you also if you are listening to this on the podcast as well. That's very exciting. There's the contact for CCU, support at opendoorcoaching.com.au. Alrighty, so let's have a think about the impact of ineffective questions. And I'm really keen to hear what you think about this as well. So you are all out there coaching, you're out there talking to managers, coaching managers to coach their people. What's the impact of ineffective questions? The first thing I notice is that break of rapport. So it's that kind of, that the kind of setback, a bit of a shock, a bit of a break of rapport. Ineffective questions, of course, will cause defensiveness and they will shut the coachee down. They will also reduce choice and options. So if particularly when people are asking closed questions, this or this, can you do this or can you do that? It actually limits choice, it limits options. And of course, we do see that the coach is in the space. So for those of you that have done our certificate for in workplace and business coaching, we are all about making sure that we stay out of the space as coaches. Yes, sometimes people with enormous wealth of knowledge and experience will do some mentoring. They will do a bit of coaching and a bit of mentoring. But what we're talking about here is not that. What we're talking about here is where the coach is basically inserting themselves into the conversation. When a coach is inserting themselves into the conversation, you will, by the way, it's an instant fail when it comes to the International Coach Federation core competencies. So the coach makes it more about them solving the problem, them solutionizing, rather than really focusing on the coachee. So then you'll see these ineffective questions come through when the coach goes into solution mode, trying to solve the problem. And I've just come off a wonderful program actually I've been interstate this week, and I was reflecting with the group that I was coaching that remember back on day one of our coaching program when we were trying to solve the problem and solutionize and ask this and ask closed questions, and look what you're doing now. So that's really wonderful to see that progression through a program. And yeah, thank you. Ian's jumped in and he says it creates confusion. Yeah, so there's confusion, isn't there? You might have been in a nice flow, and the coachee is in a really nice flow in terms of what they're thinking about, and then it's just a confusing kind of, like, you don't know where that question's coming from. So that's a good comment too. Feel free to share. What do you think the impact of those ineffective questions are? I love this quote from Peter Drucker, the management and the management guru. He says, the most serious mistakes are not being made as a result of wrong answers. The truly dangerous thinking is in asking the wrong questions. So it's interesting. They say, oh, there's no such thing as there's no, feel free to ask questions. There's no such thing as a bad question. I'm like, there's not, but there is ineffective questions when it comes to coaching. So, when a facilitator says, ask any question you like, there's no such thing as a bad question, that's fine from the coachee's point of view. But from the coach, there is better questions and there's more ineffective questions as well. So we can be attentive to this. I've been coaching for over 15 years now, and I am still attentive. I'm still listening. I'm still thinking about the questions I'm asking. I'm hearing the question. I'm tidying them up if I need to. And I'm trying to avoid all of these pitfall questions as well. Yeah, thank you for jumping in there, Charmaine. You've offered that sometimes the coachee gets stuck in a loop. So ineffective questioning means that they're just in a loop. They're just going around and around, circling back to something or circling back to what they were saying. So that's very true, actually. If the coachee is not actually moving forward, if they are really stuck in a loop, then the coach could actually reflect on the questioning then. Yeah. Shamal, thanks for asking that. So what is a great opening question at the first meeting then? So that's really fantastic. So in our, thank you for asking, in our certificate for workplace business coaching, we're really focusing on the GROW model as our structure. So our opening question would be something like, so thank you for joining us today. What would you like to focus on? So we'll also always start with what would you like to focus on today in our coaching session? What would you like to achieve in our coaching session? For those of you that have done the Cert 4 program, you could go for the ears question. So what great things have happened since I saw you last? So we might roll an ears question there. What great things have happened since I saw you last? What would you like to talk about today? What would you like to achieve from the time we have available? Any of those are really nice opening questions. Thank you for asking. And of course, that the coachee picks the topic. So when we are doing pure coaching, then the coachee is picking the topic. The coachee is working out what is the topic that they'd like to focus on, and we're taking that forward as well. Great. Feel free to jump in if you have other questions or thoughts or comments. All right, so we know the impact of ineffective questions. I wanted to just share with you, goodness me, a couple of my all-time favorite ineffective questions. My all-time favorite ineffective questions. And I've written here, yes, these actually came out of a manager's mouth. It's like, did they actually say that? So for those of you that are listening without the slides, my first all-time favorite question. Should we tell them? Now, the person was talking about the graduates. So the person was talking about graduates and coaching graduates within their organization. And the person said, on a coaching program, said, should we tell them, meaning the graduates, should we tell them how bad it is around here? Or should we just let them find out? Because we have to be honest, right? And this person who actually asked this question, they were kind of one of those people in a group that they always throw out kind of niggly they're not, they're always kind of trying to throw out like something controversial, like they throw out a little comment that's controversial, or I don't know, not quite below the line, but definitely not above the line, if that makes sense. A little bit antagonistic, if you like, just a bit smart, every now and again. And when this person asked this question, I thought they were joking. I thought they were joking. Should we tell them how bad it is around here, or should we just let them find out, because we have to be honest? So I'm like, okay. I just asked basically, so what are you actually trying to achieve with the graduate? What would you like them? What would you like their experience to be when you're working with them? And he had to go away and have a bit of a think about that. I was in a workshop where we were talking about strengths and how do we coach our team to strengths. And as you, many of you on the line know, that's one of our major models in our coaching program. So strengths-based coaching. And the person actually said, what do you do when you know your team has no strengths? Like when they have no strengths at all? And so I did the professional thing and I said, well, we all have strengths. It's up to us as coaches, as leaders, as managers to really think about it and ask good quality questions that draw out the best in people and draw out the strengths from people. So that was my response. He's like, no, I don't think you understand. My team don't my team don't have strengths. And Ian's got a fantastic question there too. I'll share that. So what are you doing to get to know your people? Brilliant question. So that would have been a very nice response too. So if this person thinks that their team's got no strengths, an excellent response. So what are you doing to really get to know your people? What are you doing to really understand the strengths of your team? Lovely, lovely way of answering or responding. The question I asked him was, I wonder what it would be like to work for a manager who thinks I have no strengths. I wonder what it would be like to work for a manager who thinks I have no strengths. And he didn't talk to me for a while after that, but all credit to him. He came back the next day or the day after and he said, you know what, I actually have been starting to ask my team about their strengths and I'm finding out really good information. I had no idea that. So, and he's talking about what he found out from having these conversations. He had no idea. So full credit to him to actually go away and do exactly what you're suggesting there, Ian. Actually get to know your people, find out really what their strengths are and dig into that. So this one really upset me actually. What do you do if they're just plain stupid and have no clue? I'm like, that's not the kind of language we use in a coaching program. That's almost below the line. So, well, it is, below the line. We don't regard people as being stupid and having no clue. And I couldn't, it was quite upsetting. I was trying to be professional when I was actually answering it. But anyway, they're my top three favorites that have come straight out of programs that I've actually delivered. And in a way, these questions were asked with genuine curiosity, but the person just didn't realize at the time, I think, what the implications of their questions were. Alrighty, so let's have a look at the questions we need to avoid. And this might be a bit of a checklist for you. Every time I think about these questions, I'm thinking, yes, am I doing that? Do I need to tidy up my coaching even after 15 years and, achieving MCC? Do I still have to tidy up my coaching in this way? Is there tidy up I need to do? And I think the answer for me is always yes. There's always something I could tidy up or do better. Oh, that's a great statement too there, Kim. You said the intention of the question in number one, in question number one, the intention of the question is not helpful. Yeah, I agree with you. So what is it you want to achieve here? What experience do you want the graduates to have? Because the intention behind it is not helpful. Yeah. Thank you. It always makes me laugh. It's one of those moments where we want to make these memes about like what comes out of the facilitator's mouth, like, oh, so how can you draw out the strengths of your team? That's what comes out of our mouths. and and then the meme that's next door that says what we're really thinking, like, are you kidding me? Are you actually asking me this question? So sometimes we have these what we say, and then what we, sometimes what we're thinking, like, wow, what kind of question? But we're trying not to be judgmental as well. So yeah. Alrighty. Let's have a look at, here we go. I just love a little Dilbert cartoon, as you'll know, just throwing this in. So for those of you that can't see the slide, Dilbert says to the boss, can you look at this bid and let me know if I can order the hardware? And the pointy-haired boss says, yes. And then Dilbert says, are you saying, yes, I can order the hardware, or yes, you'll look at it? And mumble, mumble, mumble. And he says, what? And then the boss says, I need your input on my PowerPoint deck. And the Dilbert says, so far, in response to my request, you've given me ambiguity, mumbling, and a change of subject. Would you prefer that I badger you for an answer until you get angry, or should I return to my cubicle and resume being ineffective? And the boss says, you ask too many questions. So anyway, you probably need to see the slide, but I always laugh at this. And funnily enough, poor old Dilbert, he's asking closed questions. And so he really should learn that if you ask closed questions of some people, you will get yes, no answers. And that's what the pointy-haired boss has actually given him. So whilst I always laugh at this cartoon, I'm like, Dilbert, you could have actually asked better questions. Are you saying, yes, I can order the hardware, or yes, you'll look at it? So yes. Would you like tea or coffee? Yes. Which one? You've always got to ask that backup question. Anyway. So let's look. Can you believe we actually came up with 16 types of ineffective questions? Let's see a little bit of a checklist here, which ones you might need to tidy up. First one, why questions. Now, we know that we have this debate on our Cert 4 program. We knock out why questions in the beginning, and then we bring them back when we're talking about like on day 4 of the program, when we're talking about why is that so important to you? Why are we bothering with this conversation? What are we trying to achieve? But when we're just asking straight up why questions, like, why did you do that? Why, these kind of why questions, they create defensiveness, they make people start to justify, and they're not as effective. What we would prefer is, what was your thinking? Or what made you do that? Or how did you go about making that decision? So there's using our what or how is much more effective than just your good old why question. So we knock it out a bit at the front of our Cert 4 program. We bring it back when we ask why questions about why is this so important. So that's the first one. Feel free to jump in here as you go along. Number 2, these are in no particular order, but they're just like different types of ineffective questions. Closed questions. Now, closed questions serve a purpose, don't they? They serve a purpose when we're trying to really narrow down and nail down what will you do and by when. So will you do that? Will you actually get up at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning and go for a run? We want a yes, no as an answer to that question. Where they're ineffective is what we've seen in a number of different programs. Where they're ineffective is when it's closed, like, do you understand? So do you understand? Does that make sense? And the person just says, yes, yes, yes. So where we have seen this to be ineffective is when everyone goes, yes, 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 yes. They're just answering that closed question, but they don't really understand, or it's not really making sense. And for some reason, they don't have the courage or the opportunity to speak up and ask a better question and to really get the understanding. So as you know, the better questions here are always what. So what's your understanding? What can you share with me about your understanding? How does that make sense? So swapping out the closed questions, the do you, can you, could you, should you, with open questions works really nicely here. Thank you, Marie. You said you don't know what you don't know, and so you make assumptions. Yeah, so we want to avoid that as well. Yeah. if we can. Just ask a better question, isn't it really? All right, number 3. So number 3, thought bubbles. So what is happening here with thought bubbles is people are walking around and they're saying, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking. And what we want to do here is ask, it's not so much an ineffective question. It's ineffective coaching because people are saying, I don't know what they're thinking. And then people jump in and start saying, well, I think they're saying X, Y, Z. So we want to turn this thought bubble, which is it's being ineffective at this point for the person. We're trying to turn this thought bubble into an effective question by taking the guts of it, but asking it as a question. So rather than saying, I don't know what you're thinking, it's what are you thinking? What are your thoughts on the matter? So we're turning that around to make it effective as we go. All right, let's keep going. Number 4, where are you, number 4? Oh, there you are. Stacked questions. So we want to watch out for stacked questions here as well. Stacked questions is where we're actually asking 2 questions in the one. So what are you seeing, or what are you thinking, or what are you going to do about that? So as you know, seeing, thinking, and doing are 3 different activities. So we want to just ask one question. So where do you see yourself? Answer the question. What do you see yourself doing? Answer that's another way of asking it. Or what are you thinking about your options there? So a completely different question. What are you thinking in terms of what the end state is, or where you might end up? So watch out for asking multiple questions in the one. We want to break those out. If you've got a question, just feel free to pop a message into the chat box there as well, and I can pick up the questions. Fantastic. All righty. Swearing or inappropriate. So it's pretty obvious, isn't it? It's going to be ineffective if there's some form of swearing or inappropriate question, like how stupid is that? So that kind of question, it's just, I don't know. It's obvious, isn't it? It breaks rapport, creates justification. It's almost, it's rhetorical, it's rude. We want to knock those kind of, not that we would do that as coaches, but I have heard them. So yeah, they're in it. So if this is the thing too, if we're coaching managers to coach their people, you might actually have to knock out some of these ineffective questions. So I'm offering these to you. So when you're coaching your managers to coach their people, you knock these out as well. Number 6, judgmental. So, as coaches, we are not being judgmental. We're staying out of the space. It's not up to us to decide what's possible, what's achievable, what's reality. So we're staying out of that space. So the coach would I have heard it. That's the thing. I've heard rookie coaches go, "Do you really think that's a good idea?" Now, you might want to ask that question, but a better question is, how do you evaluate that idea on a scale of 1 to 10? How achievable is that idea, or something like that, rather than, do you really think that's a good idea? Because it sounds laced with judgment. We want to watch out for that. Oh, thank you, Ian. You said, do we add jokes, religious quips, your odd little unconscious bias, little perhaps racist kind of comment into 5, swearing inappropriate? 100%. Yeah. So thank you. I definitely add all of that, making jokes, quips, those kind of things. Yeah, that goes into number 5 as well. Anything that's culturally insensitive is going to be an ineffective question, because it has that effect. I mean, apart from the fact that it is culturally insensitive, it's the impact it's having on the coachee. So again, this might be where you're coaching managers to tighten up the way that they go about it as well. Watch out for leading questions. So can I have that by the end of the week? So you will go and so why don't you talk to such and such? These are kind of leading questions. What's happening here is the coach is solutionizing. So the person's coming up with the solutions and then asking it as in a question. So why don't you try running? Why don't you go and speak to that person? Can I have that by the end of the week? So often closed, often making suggestions, leading the person down a garden path. I love it, actually, when someone says to me, I've brought up, say I've brought up 2 or 3 topics that I want to discuss. And let's say that I haven't actually narrowed down at this point which one I'm going to discuss in the coaching session. And then the coach says to me, well, why don't we talk about that? That's an interesting topic. So they choose the topic, and instantly I'm going to say, actually, I think I need to choose the topic. I'm like, this is my time for coaching. I want to choose the topic. So watch out that we're not choosing the topics and leading a person down the garden path that we want them to go down to as well. Lack of empathy, lack of tone. I call this lack of calibration, lack of really connecting and partnering with the person that we're coaching. Whenever that's going on, for whatever reason, then we're going to get questions like, is that what you really think? Like, is that what you really think? Do you reckon that's actually possible? Like, you get these questions that the tone is all wrong. It just comes across as lack of empathy. So what are you going to do about it? How's that taking you in the direction that you want? So for those of you that have done the program, many of you on the line, think about WDEP, and if you don't watch your tone with some of those questions, so how's that working for you? Complete break of rapport, completely ineffective use of that question. All right, we've got a big list, haven't we? Too direct. Now, this is interesting. I tossed up whether I put this one on or not. But where direct questions become ineffective is if they're a bit like number 8, done with lack of tone, done with lack of empathy. They're too direct for the moment. They're not appropriate for the situation, for the person you're working with, for the pace of the coaching conversation, whatever it might be. So a question like, well, what's the truth here? Well, what's the truth? It sounds laced with judgment. You've got to watch the tone. What's the truth is a lovely question if it's timed right, with rapport, with the right kind of person, picking the right moment. Like you might have a person who's saying, oh, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at that, I'm no good at this. And you might say, well, maybe that's not true. What is the truth here? Like, what have you achieved? What has been the way that you've, you might say, what have you achieved? What highlights have you been able to focus on? So they're just going, well, what's the truth? It just doesn't hit the mark. It just feels very jarring. So watch out with direct questions. There's a lot of people on the line that you'll know of that, the people on the line, you'll know that there's people we work with who are very direct. It's like, give it to me direct, fast and fearless. But sometimes that doesn't work with certain individuals that we're working with. So we just want to mix it up a bit and be careful. All right, we've got a few more. Here we go. Poor timing. So a bit like I discussed before, that the question is just not good timing for whatever reason. Too early. Might be too early to go for a nail down when they're still exploring options. They might state their goal and then the coach jumps into options straight away or solutionizing. It's like, hang on, slow down a bit. We haven't even discussed what's happening and narrowed down that goal. So we want to watch out for that. Watch out for or. So is this something you can do, or is it something you want to consider? Or so that the coach is solutionizing. Pick up your managers on this one as well when they say or, because what happens also is they trail off. Are you going to call him, or it's like, or what? So you're giving the person options here rather than getting them to explore their options. So the better question is just, so what options do you have? What other options do you have? So watch out for or. That's a big one I always pick up on our coaching programs. Oh, watch out. I'm like, what does this one mean? Watch out for right. So leading with confirmation. So we're good to go, right? We're good to go. So we're finished. That's it. So watch out for the. It's quite ineffective because you're leading the person to confirm, right? So you're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. It's quite directive. So what's happened is we might have had a nice coaching conversation, and then the coach goes into director mode and says, right, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this, right? So we laid it all out, and then the person can only say, well, yes or no. So watch out for that one. Watch out for the use of we instead of you. So can we talk about it, as opposed to what can we talk about, or what can we do to move forward, when really we want to say, what can you do to move forward? So watch out which what we're using there. Is it you? Is it I? Is it we? We've got to be clear about that one. Some of you know me. You know that I am prone to overly wordy questions. So that's something I've really tried hard to do, is watch out blah, 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 blah kind of questions when the person then is like, they don't even know how to answer it. It's so overly wordy. Watch out for questions that are not related to what the client is saying. That really we have, particularly when you're coaching managers to coach their people, they're thinking something else. They're not really listening. If you're not asking a question that's related to what the client was saying, 100% guaranteed you weren't listening, or you're thinking of another channel or another pathway that you want to take that coachee down. And if that's the case, then you're not really doing good coaching. It's ineffective. We want to bring those questions out from what the person's actually saying. Not you, Nat, Ian says, but constructing your question with your mouth engaging is wordy and confusing. Yes, so that's a very good point. We want to think about our question first and then ask the question, rather than start speaking it and then come up with it somewhere down the track. Yes, I agree. And finally, asking questions to fill in the silence. So I really try to encourage coaches. I think about it all the time for myself. When we're coaching managers to coach their people, just let the question do its job. So we ask a good question. We need to let the question do its job. Let the person think about the question, let them answer the question, rather than feeling the need to jump in and ask several questions. So, a beautiful question might be, so why is this so important to you? Let that person answer the question, rather than jumping in with, why is this so important to you? Or how's this going to make a difference to what you're doing? When you think about blah, 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 blah. So that's the final tip I have for you, is land that beautiful question. Let the question do its job. Stay out of the space. Let them actually explore and answer the question. So there you go. Can you believe it, that there's a lot of ineffective questions out there, and we can tidy up here and there as we go. Me, I'm focusing on overly wordy and stacking. I don't know. I've got a bit of stacking going on lately, so I'm trying to make sure I knock that out. Just tidy up as I go along. As I've mentioned here, our practice, and that's what we're doing, we're always practicing our coaching, always exploring how we can get better at our coaching. Our practice is to tighten up our questions, is ask more effective questions as we go along. Now, we're just a little bit over time. Anyone else want to jump in with any other types of ineffective questions, or ineffective questions that you might have heard? Feel free to jump into the chat box, and we can pick those up as we go. Of course, I've been talking about our certificate for workplace and business coaching, and the mental health first aid programs are very popular as well at the moment. So if there's any end of financial year leftover money out there, putting that into the development of your people through the certificate for workplace and business coaching program is a wonderful idea, or the mental health first aid courses. So of course, feel free to contact us about that. Excellent. Well, it's been fantastic to have you on the line. No other further comments coming through? Thank you. Thank you. That's very, it's always so great. I just, everyone's saying thank you on the chat, which is really beautiful. Thank you. It's great to be thinking about our questions, great to be coaching managers to coach their people. And as we do that, tidying them up as we go. So perhaps between now, lots to think about. I agree, Megan. Lots for me to think about as well. So perhaps between now and when we catch up again at our next coaching cafe, maybe we can think about how do we tidy up some of our questions here and there. Most importantly, I always say to you, we're making such a difference through our coaching. And so I really encourage you to go out there and enjoy it. So thanks, everyone. Happy Friday to you if you're listening to this online. And I look forward to catching up with you next week. Thank you very much.